Today, we are moving from the individual section of the social change model of leadership into the group one. And these two sections are pretty important, at least in my opinion, because I think it's not easy, but it's a little less challenging to understand your own values and be congruent with those values and act on those values and be committed to those values when it's just you. And once you start working with a group, things can get a little bit more challenging. So, first, let's talk about what is a group, right? So, teams, councils, committees, clubs all contain more than one person and aimed at achieving a common goal. And that's why common purpose is the first one, because we all are going to have our own personal goals, and then it's a matter of figuring out how those fit within the larger group goals. You see this become a problem when it comes to like group projects in college courses, because some folks, their goal might be, I want to get an A in this class, or I want to get a 4.0 or graduate with a 4.0, or someone else in that group, their goal, their own personal goal might just be, well, I want to just graduate. So I don't care what grade I get as long as I pass. Those goals are a little incompatible. So you can see how that can cause a problem. In terms of different elements of common purpose, you want to make sure your values are a big part of it, both your explicit values, which is the ones that you let the group know are a part of your values, or that are outspoken about the group and the group values, and the implicit ones, the ones that are not spoken, but you can see it's important. Like, let's say we don't actually say it, but you can tell that we are really big on respect and that you're respecting the person that you're talking to, and you can just see it from the way that we communicate with one another. That's the difference between implicit and explicit. You want to make sure those values are infused in the organizational culture and that you recognize the values and facilitate conversations about them. Just had someone recently talk about how their VP brought the group that the department that he's in charge of into this large group meeting, and they were talking about some of the issues that they've been having. But at a certain point, he just said, hey, we also need to make sure that our values are connecting. Your personal values and your personal goals, how do they fit in with what we're doing here? And I think that's so important. I think not enough leaders take that approach and prioritize having that kind of a conversation. And they're missing out on bringing people together. In terms of the vision, you want to have a future direction that the organization aspires to. You want to make sure that vision just isn't focused on production or on revenue, because that's only one small piece of it. A big part or the idea behind the social change model of leadership, it doesn't have to be either or in terms of like we have to focus on production or revenue, or we have to focus on personal, professional development, and community building. You can do both of those at the same time, and your vision should show that we have the numbers and logistics, but we also have these other visions for the organization, the difference that we can make, and both of those can happen at the same time. And you want to make sure that that vision drives the efforts of the organization. And then aims, or these smaller goals, right? So why does a group exist and what is it trying to achieve? And how does maybe groups that have to work together? So if you think about a large organization that has like PR and marketing and accounting and whatever and HR, how those each groups work together for the common goals of the entire organization. So the stages of grouping, and you see this happen again in the college courses that you've been in where you have to do a group project. So we have forming, where the group is coming together, storming or the brainstorming, where you're trying to figure out ideas, how the group wants to operate, who's going to be responsible for what. Then we have norming. What are some of the communication norms? Like, how do we speak to one another? What platform are we going to use to communicate? It's going to be email, text, all of those things. And then we have just the performing, the day-to-day function of the group. And then if you've reached your goal, then it is a journey and then you're done. And at different organizations, you could see this happen at multiple times within an organization. If someone leaves, then you have to form a new group when someone else gets hired. And that's all part of this group stage. There's different stages of group development. So as we move from common purpose and start leading into conflict, communication becomes even more important, right? You want to make sure you're using a common language, it doesn't mean simple language. It means that you are using language that is common within that group, making sure that you're using the right phrasing. If you're working in an accounting department, that you're all using the same language of accounting. That's what common language means. That you're actively listening to one another, that you're conveying your message clearly, because sometimes we're communicating and we think the person gets it, but we didn't get that feedback from them. We didn't ask for that feedback. Like, hey, let me know if you really understand what the end result of this conversation is. And then you want to have reflective and meaningful dialogue. Really want to make sure that you're not just talking about the nuts and bolts of the day to day of the organization, that you're really having meaningful dialogue about what's important and what their values are. So inevitably you're gonna have conflict. Some people see conflict as inherently bad, but it's not. I think good groups should have some conflict. That's how you get better ideas. That's how you innovate. That's how you grow together, by going through this kind of conflict. Now, conflict is characterized by arguments and competition that force members to take a position, because basically what it boils down to is, I want to be right and you're going to be wrong, or my way is the best way and your way is least effective. And you already get people defensive when that's your approach to conflict. Controversy with civility is different, right? So it's being open to dissent. You're open to being wrong. That's basically how I want you to think of it. And you're fostering a supportive and collaborative environment. It's okay for some ideas to remain unresolved. It's okay if you don't get to a solution in that moment. Ultimately, you want to lead to more developed positions on ideas, because more people are going to be involved. You might say, hey, I have this really great idea, but you're not thinking about some of the limitations, and someone else might be able to do that for you because they're not so closely tied to the idea. Or someone might say, that's great. And actually, you know how we can make it better is X, Y, and Z. And all of a sudden, you took a really good idea and turned it into a really great idea. But you can't do that if you're stopping yourselves from getting into conflict, from having these arguments, from pushing back. And it takes a lot of humility for a leader to be open to that. This graph here gives you a good idea of what different levels of civility and controversy might lead to. If you look at the whole left side and then the bottom right, you can see how it can cause problems and how it can stifle creativity and innovation. Whereas this top right, the group engages in controversy with civility by valuing differences to build understanding. That's key, right? You want to understand what the goals are. You want to understand how other people can contribute, what their ideas are, and you're really having meaningful conflict. It's not just about arguing, but you're trying to get to the best ideas and the best path forward. So what does controversy with civility look like? What are some elements? You have awareness of your own worldview, awareness of others' worldview, and you only figure that out if you were fostering dialogue, not just having an open door policy in terms of come in and talk to me, but really creating an environment and a culture where people feel comfortable and confident walking in and pushing back and dissenting, or just having a good conversation with you. You want to do that. If you start doing that, you're going to build trust. If you start creating that environment, you are absolutely going to build trust with your team. You want to acknowledge and engage in controversy, and you want to examine the context and the spaces where you're having these conflicts or this controversy. But yeah, I think too many people are avoiding conflict in a group. I think you even see that again in the college courses where you're having to do a group project. People don't like conflict, but it is so important, especially if you want to get really, really great ideas. So that is common purpose and controversy with civility.